The sun cast a golden glow over the tarmac as Elijah Carter stepped out of his sleek black SUV, his polished shoes touching the ground with purpose. Elijah was a self-made billionaire, a towering figure in the worlds of technology, real estate, and philanthropy. At only 38 years old, his journey from the streets of Atlanta to the upper echelons of wealth and influence was the stuff of legend. Today, he was en route to a critical meeting in Paris, an opportunity to finalize a groundbreaking deal that could reshape urban infrastructure worldwide. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Clad in a tailored navy blue suit, Elijah exuded an air of quiet authority. But beneath his calm exterior was a man driven by the weight of expectations and the memories of a past filled with struggles. As he approached the private terminal, he glanced at the jet parked on the tarmac, a sleek Gulfstream G700 that gleamed under the morning sun. It was his, a symbol of everything he had achieved. Elijah had purchased it outright months ago, a tangible reminder that he had not only survived but thrived in a world where odds were often stacked against men like him. As he neared the steps leading to the aircraft, a uniformed crew member descended hurriedly, intercepting him. She was tall, blonde, and exuded the polished professionalism common in private aviation. However, there was an edge to her tone that Elijah immediately noticed. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her smile taut and disingenuous. "Can I help you?" Elijah paused, his brows furrowing slightly. "I'm Elijah Carter. I'll be boarding now." Her smile stiffened further, and her eyes narrowed, scanning him as if searching for evidence to corroborate his claim. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, her voice laced with a subtle condescension. "This is a private charter. Unless you're part of the approved guest list, I can't let you board." Elijah felt a flicker of irritation rise within him, but maintained his composure. "I am the approved guest list. That jet belongs to me." The crew member's demeanor shifted, her professionalism faltering. Her expression betrayed disbelief, as if the idea of a black man owning such an opulent aircraft defied her expectations. "I'll have to verify that," she said curtly, stepping back toward the steps and gesturing for him to wait. Elijah's jaw tightened. This wasn't the first time he had encountered doubt, skepticism, or outright discrimination, even after reaching the pinnacle of success. But in moments like these, he was reminded of the resilience that had propelled him forward all his life. He pulled out his phone and accessed the ownership documentation for the jet, a folder meticulously organized by his assistant. Still, he held back, deciding to let the moment play out. Minutes later, two additional crew members emerged from the cabin, a middle-aged captain with graying hair and a younger flight attendant. Their expressions mirrored the first crew members, a mix of suspicion and haughty disbelief. The captain stepped forward, his tone brisk and dismissive. "Sir, I'm not sure what you've been told, but this jet is reserved for Mr. Carter. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the tarmac." Elijah folded his arms, his gaze steady. "I am Mr. Carter." The words hung in the air, but instead of the apology or acknowledgement Elijah might have expected, the captain chuckled, a low, condescending sound that struck a nerve. "Right," he said, exchanging a glance with the blonde crew member. "Look, let's not make this difficult. Security will escort you back to the terminal if necessary." Elijah's patience snapped. He stepped forward, his voice firm but calm. "Call the company. Check the ownership records. Right now." The captain hesitated, the confidence in his tone faltering slightly. Perhaps it was something in Elijah's unflinching gaze, or the authority with which he carried himself. But the man begrudgingly pulled out a phone and began dialing. The minutes that followed were a study in awkward tension, with the crew members exchanging furtive glances as the captain's side of the conversation grew increasingly subdued. When he finally ended the call, his face was pale. I apologize, Mr. Carter," he stammered, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding." Elijah stepped closer, his voice now laced with an icy resolve. "It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was arrogance and prejudice." He turned to the blonde crew member. "And you? What exactly made you think I didn't belong here?" The woman opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her cheeks flushed red as she fumbled for an explanation. Elijah didn't wait for one. Instead, he addressed the entire crew. "Every single one of you just showed me exactly how you view people like me, and I won't tolerate it." He pulled out his phone again, this time calling his legal team. Within moments, he was connected to his assistant, James, a no-nonsense man who handled Elijah's affairs with precision. "James," Elijah said, his voice calm but resolute, "get me a replacement crew, effective immediately." The captain stepped forward, his face stricken. "Mr. Carter, please, I assure you—" "You're fired," Elijah interrupted, his tone final. He turned to the others. "All of you, you can collect your things and leave the jet, now." The crew stood frozen, disbelief etched across their faces. Elijah walked past them, ascending the steps of his jet. As he entered the cabin, the familiar luxury of the space greeted him. Plush leather seats, polished wood accents, and state-of-the-art amenities. Yet the sting of the encounter lingered. He had fought for every inch of the success he now enjoyed, but moments like these reminded him of the barriers that still existed, even at the summit. By the time the replacement crew arrived, an efficient and respectful team handpicked by James, Elijah was seated comfortably, a glass of sparkling water in hand. As the jet soared into the sky, he allowed himself a moment to reflect. He thought of his upbringing in Atlanta, the youngest of 3 siblings raised by a single mother who worked tirelessly to provide for her family. His mother, a woman of unyielding strength, had instilled in him a belief that he could achieve greatness despite the systemic obstacles in his way. That belief had carried him through the lean years, through the long nights studying computer science, and through the countless rejections that preceded his first major breakthrough. Elijah's first company, a tech startup focused on smart city solutions, had been born in a cramped apartment with little more than a second-hand laptop and an idea. The road to success had been anything but smooth, marked by sleepless nights, financial struggles, and an uphill battle to secure funding in an industry where venture capitalists often overlooked founders who didn't fit their preconceived notions of success. But Elijah had persevered, turning his startup into a juggernaut that transformed urban living across the globe. From there, he had expanded his empire, investing in real estate, renewable energy, and even creating a foundation to support underserved communities. His journey had made headlines, but it had also painted a target on his back. He had learned to navigate the scrutiny and skepticism, but days like today reminded him that the fight was far from over. As the jet leveled out at cruising altitude, Elijah opened his laptop and began reviewing the presentation for his Paris meeting. The deal he was about to secure would not only cement his legacy, but also create opportunities for millions of people in cities around the world. The thought filled him with renewed determination. When the jet landed in Paris hours later, Elijah disembarked with his new crew in tow. The incident on the tarmac had been a reminder of the work still to be done, not just in his businesses, but in the broader fight for equity and respect. He was determined to use his platform and influence to continue breaking down barriers, ensuring that the path for those who came after him would be less fraught with obstacles. The meeting in Paris went exactly as he had planned, and as he signed the final documents, Elijah felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond the financial gains. This was about legacy, about proving that he belonged in every room, on every jet, and at every table, no matter who doubted him. And it was about ensuring that others like him would never have to justify their presence. As Elijah boarded his jet for the return flight, the new crew greeted him with professionalism and respect. He settled into his seat, gazing out the window as the lights of Paris disappeared below. The road ahead would undoubtedly bring more challenges, but Elijah Carter was no stranger to adversity. He was a man who thrived in the face of it, turning every setback into an opportunity to rise higher. The jet ascended into the night sky, a symbol of his unyielding determination and the heights he had yet to reach. As Elijah Carter leaned back in the plush leather seat of his Gulfstream G700, he thought about how far he had come and how much further he wanted to go. The memories of his humble beginnings never left him. In fact, they were what fueled his drive to succeed. The world had a way of making people like him feel small, no matter how much they achieved. That day on the tarmac wasn't just a singular incident, it was part of a larger narrative that he had spent his entire life rewriting. The hum of the jet's engines was soothing, and as he sipped his sparkling water, Elijah pulled out his tablet, opening a new document. He often used long flights as moments of reflection, but this time, the incident earlier in the day had sparked something deeper. It was no longer just about proving himself or accumulating wealth. Elijah had realized he wanted to leave an impact that transcended even his massive business empire. The page stared back at him, blank and waiting. Elijah began typing, pouring his thoughts into the document. The title, The Blueprint for Change. It wasn't a business plan or a pitch for investors. It was a vision, a roadmap for how he could use his influence to make meaningful changes in the industries and communities he touched. Elijah knew that representation was one of the most powerful tools for dismantling the biases that plagued society. He remembered the first time he had seen someone like him, a black man in a suit, confidently speaking at a tech conference. It had been a rare moment during his early years, and it had planted the seed of ambition in him. If seeing one person could have that effect on him, what could an entire generation of visible, successful black leaders accomplish? He began drafting ideas on the tablet. One of his first thoughts was to create a leadership program aimed at nurturing talent from underserved communities. The program would offer mentorship, funding, and opportunities to access industries that had historically been gatekept. Tech, finance, aviation, medicine, there was no sector he wouldn't target. The initiative would bear his mother's name, the Gloria Carter Foundation for Leadership and Equity. But Elijah didn't stop there. He wrote about creating a global network of minority-owned businesses that could share resources, knowledge, and connections. Too often, businesses like his were isolated, competing for limited attention and resources. A network would provide collective strength, making it impossible for gatekeepers to ignore their contributions. The ideas flowed quickly, and Elijah's fingers danced across the screen. He envisioned scholarships, accelerator programs for entrepreneurs, partnerships with corporations to increase diversity in leadership roles, and an annual summit where minority leaders could strategize on dismantling systemic barriers. As he wrote, Elijah's mind drifted back to his early career struggles. He thought about the countless times his proposals had been dismissed, not because they lacked merit, but because of who he was and where he came from. He thought about the venture capitalist who had once told him, "You don't look like the type of founder we invest in." That moment had crushed him, but it had also motivated him to succeed in ways that couldn't be ignored. He wouldn't let the next generation face the same obstacles. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, signaling the late hour. Elijah glanced at his watch, realizing he'd been working for over 2 hours, but he wasn't tired. In fact, he felt energized, as if every word he typed was fueling a fire inside him. For the first time in years, his work felt less like a strategy for profit and more like a mission with purpose. When his tablet battery finally flashed low, Elijah set it aside, staring out the window at the dark expanse of the Atlantic Ocean below. He could see his reflection faintly in the glass, a reminder of the man he had become, but also of the boy he had been. That boy, full of dreams and determination, would never have imagined sitting here, flying above the clouds in a jet he owned outright. Yet Elijah knew he wasn't just flying for himself. He was flying for all the boys and girls who still needed to see someone like him defy expectations. The next morning, Elijah landed back in New York, greeted by the brisk winter air as he stepped off the jet. James, his assistant, was already waiting for him, bundled in a sharp overcoat. The man handed him a detailed schedule for the day, but Elijah waved it off. "Clear my morning," Elijah said. "I need time to finalize something." James nodded without question. He had worked with Elijah long enough to know that when his boss was focused on something, it was best to step aside and let him work. Back in his penthouse office, Elijah dove back into his document, refining his ideas and expanding on his plans. He began making calls to his closest advisors, outlining the vision he had developed overnight. Most were intrigued, some hesitant. They cautioned him about spreading himself too thin. After all, Elijah already had a packed schedule with his various businesses. But Elijah was resolute. "This isn't just a passion project," he told one of his senior advisors. "This is about legacy. What's the point of having all of this if I'm not using it to break barriers?" He scheduled a meeting with his board of directors later that week, determined to pitch his plan and secure their buy-in. Elijah knew that even as the CEO, he needed his team's support to ensure the project's long-term success. This wasn't something he could do alone. On the day of the meeting, Elijah arrived in the conference room with a polished presentation and a determined energy. He had spent hours practicing his pitch, anticipating every question and concern the board might raise. As he stood before them, the room grew silent, all eyes on him. "This isn't just about doing what's right," Elijah began. "It's about recognizing the potential that has been ignored for too long. It's about tapping into talent, innovation, and leadership that will make us stronger as a company and as a society. He outlined his vision in detail, from the leadership program to the global network of minority-owned businesses. He showed projections of how the initiative could generate not only social impact, but also financial returns. By the end of his presentation, the room was buzzing with conversation. Board members exchanged looks, their initial skepticism giving way to interest. After a lengthy discussion, the board voted unanimously to move forward with Elijah's plan. He felt a surge of pride, but he knew this was just the beginning. The real work lay ahead. Over the following months, Elijah poured himself into bringing the vision to life. The Gloria Carter Foundation launched its first leadership cohort, selecting 25 talented individuals from diverse backgrounds to participate in an intensive year-long program. Elijah personally mentored several of the participants, sharing lessons from his own journey and helping them navigate the challenges they faced. Meanwhile, the network of minority-owned businesses grew rapidly, attracting hundreds of members from around the world. The annual summit became a highlight of the business calendar, drawing attention from major media outlets and industry leaders. For Elijah, the most rewarding moments were hearing the stories of those who had benefited from his initiatives. Stories of entrepreneurs who had secured funding, students who had landed life-changing scholarships, and leaders who had broken through glass ceilings. But Elijah's work didn't stop there. He began leveraging his influence to push for systemic changes within the industries he operated in. He advocated for more inclusive hiring practices, greater diversity on corporate boards, and policies that addressed racial inequities in education and access to capital. He partnered with advocacy groups and government agencies, using his platform to amplify their efforts. Despite the successes, there were challenges. Not everyone welcomed Elijah's efforts, and he faced backlash from those who felt threatened by the changes he was championing. Some accused him of overstepping, while others dismissed his initiatives as mere public relations tactics. But Elijah had faced worse in his career, and he wasn't about to let criticism deter him. One evening, as Elijah sat in his office overlooking the city, James entered with a stack of letters. "You might want to see these," he said, setting them on the desk. Elijah picked up the first envelope and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note from a young woman in Detroit who had been part of the leadership program's inaugural cohort. She wrote about how the program had changed her life, giving her the confidence and resources to start her own business. The business was now thriving, and she was hiring people from her community, creating opportunities for others just as Elijah had done for her. Letter after letter told similar stories of lives changed, barriers broken, and dreams realized. Elijah felt a lump in his throat as he read them. This was why he had worked so hard. This was why he refused to give up, even in the face of doubt and resistance. As he set the letters down, Elijah looked out at the city lights stretching into the horizon. He knew there was still so much work to be done, but for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. The legacy he was building wasn't just about wealth or power. It was about creating a world where no one would ever have to prove they belonged, because their talents, dreams, and determination would speak for themselves. Elijah Carter smiled to himself. The journey wasn't over, but he was ready for whatever lay ahead. After all, he had never been one to back down from a challenge, and now he had an entire movement behind him. As the weeks turned into months, Elijah Carter's initiatives began to gain momentum in ways even he hadn't anticipated. Media outlets took notice of his work, dubbing him not just a mogul, but a revolutionary. The headlines were glowing. Billionaire Elijah Carter rewrites the playbook for philanthropy, and a visionary leader breaking barriers and building bridges. Yet it wasn't the recognition that fueled Elijah. It was the tangible change he could see unfolding in real time. One such change came during a visit to Atlanta, the city where his journey had begun. He stood on the site of what was once a neglected lot in a struggling neighborhood. Now, thanks to a partnership between his foundation and local developers, it had been transformed into a bustling community center. The Gloria Carter Center, named in honor of his late mother, offered everything from vocational training to childcare, tech labs to wellness programs. It was a hub of opportunity, buzzing with life and energy. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, What are your thoughts on a billionaire being denied access to their own jet? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.